Okay, I think we're good to go. Cool. All right, hello to the hordes of you who are starting medical and biomedical science in semester 2. Welcome, welcome. Sounds like you're on the right place for either of these two courses. My name's Hilary. I'm your program director for either of the courses that you're in. And basically what that means is if you've got some academic questions about your study progress or where you're trying to get to with your degree, you can come and have a chat to me about that. We also have Michael Sidney over here. Did you want to introduce yourself, Michael?
Yeah, sure. So, hello, my name's Michael. I'm sure you'll see a lot of me in your first year studies. So, I might move a little bit closer to your computer, actually.
Oh, sure.
Just for the mic.
Yep.
So, for anyone listening, hello, my name is Michael Sidney. I wear a few hats in this faculty. So, I'm your first year science student coordinator, which basically means I'm here to help you transition into university. University is an awesome place. They're kind of like their own little worlds on campus, and there's lots of resources and people out there to help you. So I'm kind of the person that can help facilitate you access all those support services with your tertiary education. I'm also here to help in an academic sense in that way as well. But you'll also see me as a unit convener for professional orientation science, which is a first year unit that you have to take. And you might see me sort of tutoring into a couple of other units along the way as well. I'm also the assistant program director, which means that I help out Hilary with some of the core stuff. So yeah, you will probably see me crop up a few times across the path of your degree in a really good way. So yeah, if you have any questions, look, I'll be about. Come and see me at the lunch, or if you're listening online, you can always email me as well.
Yeah, the bottom line is apologies, you're going to be sick of the two of us by the end of your course. So as we go through, we're going to present a bit of stuff. If you've got any questions at any stage, if there's anybody listening at home or for those of you in the room, please feel free to just yell out and ask as we go. Otherwise, you're welcome to catch us at the end for some specific questions or similarly at lunch afterwards. I'd like to acknowledge that currently here at UC on our campus in Bruce, we're actually on the lands of the Ngunnawal people, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. And for those of you who are watching from home or perhaps watching a recording, you may be on other people's lands. We have a Dean's welcome video. I won't play this at this stage because we'll actually give you access to this and a bunch of other resources through the course advice site. How many of you are already on our course advice site in Canvas? Do many of you know what a Canvas site is? Have you seen it? It's perfectly reasonable if you haven't, you're literally just starting. That's okay. Basically what I'm going to do is part of the information I'm going to give you today is essentially showing where you can access all of this material. And I will actually play this video at the end for those of you who would like to see it, but this and many, many more resources are available to you as you get started. Oh, it might work. No, I think we have no audio, so we'll move on. All right, as I said, I'm a lecturer and program director here. You're going to see me in a bunch of chemistry-related courses and a bunch of other things. In terms of your actual course advice, the first point of contact is this SciTech student inquiries email address. Once again, there's not going to be a pop quiz at the end where I ask you if you've memorized this, but essentially this is a general inquiries inbox where you'll be farmed out to the best person who can help you with your inquiry, but you are also welcome to get in touch with me as well. These are the people in our whole faculty. So your course that you're about to study sits within the School of Science, and the School of Science sits within the Faculty of Science and Technology. And these are a bunch of the people who you'll end up coming across. In fact, we're really lucky. I've just seen the head of the School of Science. Sorry to drop you in it, Tariq.
No problem.
This is Professor Tariq Azaz. He's the head of our school at the moment, and he's very kindly dropped in.
Welcome, everyone. And I'll hope to see you all at the lunch. So enjoy, and I'll have the formal welcome at lunch. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tariq. The wonderful thing about this, I think, is when you're catching people walking around the hallways and when you have people as your conveners of your units, actually a lot of the people who are on this screen, whilst they hold quite senior positions within our faculty, they're actually heavily involved in the teaching of your units. And we're really excited at the moment. You've just started our new courses. So as you're developing and as you're going through all of your units, they're all newly designed, and these people have had input into those design of those units. So please make the most of the people you see on the screen and all of your conveners, because they're heavily involved in the running of the faculty and the research and the teaching that's going on. So it's kind of exciting. Okay, so in terms of, you might need a one-stop shop for course advice or administrative stuff to do with the university. Hopefully some of you might have been to Student Central already. That's in building number 1. They can provide you with assistance in terms of course advice. So we have our own faculty education team members who sit over in Building 1 in certain times of the day, where you can drop in and ask them questions about your study plan or about the units that you're taking, all that kind of thing. And they are available each week to do that. There's also some things with general uni logistics. So if you're having trouble with enrolling, if you're not sure about HEX help, stuff to do with student services and emails, the student portal, your timetable, ID cards, just the general questions that you have about university, 9 times out of 10, Student Central is going to be able to help you there. So they're your first point of contact. If you have questions about your course, so oftentimes we have students who come and ask us some questions, which is completely fair enough, but usually we find that actually that information is available for you online, and it's not that we don't want to help you, but you might have a burning question that you want answered at 10 p.m, and obviously there's not going to be a staff member who can necessarily answer that logistical question for you. So if you can find it online because you're working or you've got carers responsibilities and that's the time you've dedicated to this task, the best place for you to go and have a look at is what we call our digital handbook, but it really is just that find a unit or find a course place that you can find on our Uni Canberra website. And that actually has all of the information in it for all of your units going forwards. So you can find on that website the whole structure of your course. You can find on that website a suggested study pattern for people starting in semester 2. It will link you into every unit that you can see projected into the future. The one difficulty, I guess, with being in this exciting time of doing a new course is that we don't necessarily have full unit outlines available for every single unit because they're still being produced as we're developing that course. But you can still see all of the descriptions and all of the learning outcomes. And there's a contact person. I think actually for all new units, it's me, but you can come and have a chat to me about what those units would entail if you want to. The other really important thing about that is it tells you what the prerequisites are for your later units. So if you perhaps are making a decision about needing to part-time study and what units might be most useful to you, and you want to go and have a chat to our education team about how to progress your study, knowing what things are prerequisites will be really important for you essentially, but that is all available online for you to check yourself. The course advice that you can receive, so we have the general course advice we'd start off with, so there's study plan advice, there's applications. I know there's at least a couple of people in the room or who might be listening who've done some study elsewhere and would like to bring across some credit from another institution. Is there anybody who's in that boat at the moment? Yeah, great, yep. So we can give you some general advice about that. That sort of stuff is also on the My UC area, so it links you into every process that you might need to follow. Variations to course requirements and in particular issues with course progress. And we don't mean issues as in you've got a significant issue, although if you do, that's fair enough. Sometimes we find students, there's things that are out of control in their lives, out of their control, I should say, in their lives, and they have to have a conversation with us about the best way to progress. So our course advice, our education team can help with that. We also, you can see here, have this URL down the bottom here, UC Learn. It's called UC Learn or also Canvas. That's what I was referring to before. There's a dedicated site that actually also helps you with this stuff. So it has a general study pattern that you can follow without having to talk to a course advice person, has general information about prerequisites, all that kind of thing. So hopefully 9 times out of 10, you'll be able to find your information that you need without having to come to us, but please don't hesitate if you do have further questions. Communications in the university, this is a tricky one. So many of you may have done some study before, but some of you may be starting completely new at university. We have computers available on campus. So if you're in a home situation where you don't have internet that is necessarily reliable or you can't always access a device, you are always welcome to use the UC campus computers. And going forwards more and more with COVID and things like that, we are seeing that more assessments may be going online. But what that does mean is we will make sure that you have a device if you need it to do those tasks. You can obviously remotely log in though if you've got your own device and reliable internet at home. And we have My UC, which is our student portal. We have Canvas, which will have a site for each of your units. And obviously you'll have an email that you can use to communicate with staff. I will just flag that when you do communicate with a staff member at UC, it has to be from your student email address. It can't be from a personal email address, Gmail, Hotmail, something like that. And it might actually seem really pedantic when the staff member comes back to you and says, I'm really sorry, I can't answer your question until you've emailed me from a student account, but it's actually a privacy issue for us. So we can't confirm who is emailing us if it comes from a generic email address. We can only use the student one. So that's the way to go basically to start off with. If you have any IT issues though, once again, we do have an IT service desk who can help you with any of that stuff. All right, so what is this magical thing called Canvas or UC Learn that we keep talking about? What you will have on Canvas is a dedicated Canvas site for every unit that you're enrolled in. So most of you, I'm guessing, are going into 4 units starting off in semester 2. You will have 4 Canvas sites, one for each of those units. And within that Canvas site, that's how your unit convener will do all of the communication with you as a cohort for that unit. So I'd highly recommend actually making sure you're checking that site at least once a day, because they will make announcements on that site which are deemed to be made to all of the students. And that's also the tricky thing. We're far more flexible in our learning and teaching and study now, because obviously things are more online, but it means we don't oftentimes get a chance to be face-to-face with students if you're choosing to access more material online. So it does then mean that we have to be checking Canvas, because that's how our communication will be done. You can set up Canvas so it will email you when things are sent out and all of that kind of thing, so you won't miss anything, but just be aware that that might be how your conveners are actually communicating with you. There is also a School of Science course advice and information Canvas site. So that's a separate site that you will also have access to. And once again, that's got general course advice on it that's not specific to your units. The really exciting thing is there's a bunch of other stuff that might be useful for your course that's not unit specific. Things like if there might be internship opportunities or perhaps research talks that might be going on in the faculty that you might be interested in that will help your course progression. All of that stuff will be on our School of Science course advice site. And you should have been sent an invitation. So anytime you should be involved in a Canvas site, you'll be sent an invitation. You just click on the link and it will automatically manually enroll you. Oh, that doesn't make sense, automatically and manually. You don't have to do it. It'll do it for you, is what I mean. There are also a bunch of other services, and for me, I feel really disappointed in myself because when I was a student, I always thought that any other service that was there, it showed a failing on my part if I was having to access it. So things like study skills, we have a maths help, we have Studiosity, which is a 24/7 study help option. So this one here, actually, we access this, or you get access to this through your Canvas sites. Basically, this is something that all UC students have access to. And if you have a question that's related to content in your course, you can access this and ask it and have a response that's actually open 24/7. So obviously your tutors and your conveners, we would never expect you to be responding to things at midnight, but you might have that time dedicated to your own study. And whilst you can't access your convener, you can access Studiosity. They also do things like feedback for report writing. So you're not going to get an immediate turnaround, but you might want to say, hey, I've written this report, I want some tips, I want some feedback, and you can submit your reports through there as well. Study skills, so these are essentially ensuring that you might have the skills required for study that might be generic rather than unit specific. So study skills is not going to teach you about stoichiometry and chemistry, but if you're finding that maybe your time management skills, you might need some strategies, things like procrastination, even things like that is a problem for all of us. But basically a bunch of things where you might think, okay, maybe I haven't studied for a while, or I'm coming into a completely new course. I want some tips on research and note taking. I want some tips on how to format a report correctly or use citations correctly. Study skills can help you with those kinds of things. I will say, I guess, with all of these types of things too, is essentially we are paying for all of these services. So your student fees go towards having these available to you. So I think about any of these services as they are your coaches. You are trying to run the best race possible. What coaching techniques can you use to help you run that race as best as you possibly can? So if you think there's something that UC can do to help you, absolutely go and make use of that, because it is there for that purpose. We obviously have some health and wellbeing services. So we have medical and counselling who are on campus. They are also over in Building 1 right next to student services. They have doctors available, and they also have psychologists if you would like to go and have an appointment. They're also the people who your conveners might direct you to if you need an extension for any reason because you've been ill. Actually, all of that information about how to go through that process is online, and there are certain pieces of evidence that means your convener will just tick, yes, absolutely, you get an extension. One of those things might be requiring a medical certificate. So if you're at an assessment task and you're really obviously unwell, your convener might suggest that you head along to medical and counselling to get a medical certificate for something like that. But obviously any medical appointments are welcome there. We also have student wellbeing, so they're a little different. There might be other concerns that you have whilst at university that might not be directly health related. So there might be individual grievances, you might have financial difficulties or housing difficulties. They can support you with all of those kinds of things as well. And their contact details will be available on this slide. A bunch of other things here. So basically you're sort of sitting here thinking, I need a degree to figure out what things are available to me in my degree. Again, you don't have to make use of all of these things, but we have a bunch of other groups who will help you with specific things that you may or may not need at different types of your course. So we have careers UC, and all of you as part of your course will actually end up doing a placement at some stage. So they can help you with kinds of skills of actually finding those things, perhaps tailoring your CV to meet certain job applications that you might be looking for, that kind of thing. We also have Inclusion UC, which is a really important team. So many students may be coming to university with some learning challenges that they have. And that could be something from a hearing difficulty, which means they might need their conveners or their lecturers to stand in a particular place or have a microphone set up. It might be extra time or a quieter room to do assessment tasks in. So if you head to Inclusion UC, they can help with things like that, which includes developing what we call a reasonable adjustment plan. So those things are confidential. If a student wants to access that, you would talk to an individual team member at Inclusion UC. You would negotiate that reasonable adjustment plan, and then what happens is the convener of all of your units is alerted that there's a student who has a reasonable adjustment plan and what those adjustments are. They're not given any further information though. So if there's an adjustment on there that says this student needs to have 10 extra minutes per hour in an assessment task, then that's what they'll action. I will say though that involves a conversation with your convener. So the convener won't know off the top of their head to do this. The student will go and talk to the convener to make sure those things can be actioned, but that's all done through Inclusion UC. Number of other things here, and again, I'll let you guys have a look at that depending on what you think you might like to access throughout your course. We also have a UC student mentor program. So if you want to, you can become part of this program and they'll pair you up with a student who's already a little ahead of you, who's been through obviously the start of university. So if you feel like Michael and I are too old and daggy for you to ask questions that we're not cool enough, probably that's true. And you might just have questions that you feel like are silly questions. They're not. I promise you, no question you're going to ask us is a silly question. But if you just want someone who's been in the same boat as you to be able to answer some questions, then this program can help you out with that. Finally, before we move on to the last couple of bits to do with your actual courses, this is our Student Resource Centre. So it's really hard to find. I think I walked around for about 20 minutes as the program director before I managed to find out where this building is. So potentially if you can ever figure out where it is, please let me know. But it is in Building 6, and after lunch, if you like, or directly after this session, I'm happy to take anybody there who wants to go. I've circled Building 27, so that's where we are currently, and Building 6 is essentially straight over that way. But the Student Resource Centre is a really useful place. So it's where we have an activity called PALS. So we have peer assisted learning with our peer leaders that we'll talk about in a sec. So basically you can actually have sessions with students who have literally just done well in the units that you're doing, who can help you out. There's access to a heap of textbooks there. There's access to a bunch of other resources, quiet study spaces, all that kind of thing. So the Student Resources Centre is definitely a good place to go. And finally, in terms of student society, so maybe some social activities that you might want to join in for, we do have a UC Medical and Biomedical Science Society that you can join up for. They've got social activities. They also run study support sessions, so you can get together with a group of people who are studying your course already. So all kinds of helpful things specific to your course. All right, so how do you build your course? What are you actually going to do going into next semester and beyond? We have our teaching period, so you guys are about to go into yours. For all of your courses, they're run semester based. So you have semester 1, semester 2, or semester 2 going into semester 1 next year. We actually have very few units that run over winter and summer. So just be aware that there aren't usually catch-ups run for units. There are a couple of exceptions. And again, you can find that information through our course advice site. There are a couple of things too where we could let you run over for certain units, but again, they're really specific. So definitely come have a chat. But what it does mean is the majority of your study will be in the 2 semesters each year. In terms of some terminology, we talk about this all the time, and it really is just a new language, I think, to learn. But we're going to discuss units that you have, and those units build together to form majors, and those majors build together to form your course overall. And one of the things that it's my job to do is look at quality control for your course, but also make sure at the end of it that you have satisfied your course requirements so that you can graduate. And we don't want anybody feeling stressed about that. It should be really obvious to you when you're going to have completed the requirements of your course, so you can plan the next stages of your life and career plan, basically. So when we talk about a unit, it's kind of similar to saying a subject. This unit is your semester-long thing that you will be studying, and they have names like biological concepts, chemical foundations. Most of you will be going into professional orientation next semester, that's a unit. Chemical concepts, that's a unit. Data analysis skills for science, that's a unit. They're usually worth what we call 3 credit points. So over the whole course of your study, you have to do 72 credit points. So that tells you basically how many units you need to do to complete. They also have an identifying code. So usually when you ask a question about your study, you're going to get a number of codes back, potentially from myself or Michael or our education team. We're not trying to talk in codes, but many of the units have very similar names. And because we're in the middle of curriculum review, there are some units that literally have the same name as an old unit versus a new unit. So we go by the code because that will be unique for your unit. So it might be well worth just having that in the back of your mind. When you have those units, they actually build together to form a major. So that's usually a set of 8 units or 24 credit points, and that has progressed throughout the unit. So you might start with your level 1 units in your first year, kind of down the bottom of that major, and they'll get progressively more sophisticated as you go until you get to your 3rd year or your level 3 units, and all of those combined form a major. And for those of you in the room, you all have majors associated with the courses, and they've already been pre-planned for you. So you don't necessarily need to select these, and as long as you're following your study pattern, you don't need to worry that you're not completing these, because your study pattern will already have inbuilt for it the units required to meet the majors for your courses. Some of you, if you're doing a Bachelor of Biomedical Science, might end up choosing to do what we call a minor as well, because you've got space for it. But again, you don't necessarily need to worry about that. So if you have a specific area that you're really interested in, we could find you a combination of units that fits a minor. But as long as you meet your majors as part of your course requirements, then you're all set. Most students complete a course without doing a minor, so it's not something you have to stress about necessarily. Workload, this is something that's really important to be upfront about, because a lot of people have working responsibilities or caring responsibilities. Each unit that's about 3 credit points, or there is 3 credit points, generally has about 150 hours of workload associated with it, and that's upfront. It'll say that in the unit outline. And that's over your semester, which is about 15 weeks long. So you can see that for any one unit that you're doing, you should be doing about 10 hours of work. Now that might be, some of the hours might be included in you're going to a 2-hour lab that week, so that is included in the 10 hours. Or it might be you're preparing for assessment tasks, or you're preparing for a lecture that you're about to watch. So what the 10 hours are each week might be a little different, and it will also vary between the units. But basically what you can see is if you're doing 4 units of study and there's 10 hours a week in each, that's 40 hours of study or work that needs to be done. So for those of you who are trying to do a lot of paid work outside, just be aware that you might need to have a conversation probably sooner rather than later with our education team to see if you can maybe plan out some part-time study for some of your period, because I've worked with a lot of students basically who find that unmanageable. Trying to work almost full-time and study full-time is really challenging. So definitely have a chat if you need to. We call full-time 4 units, so 12 credit points a semester. If you're part-time, you're doing fewer than 3 units. And again, it's just a matter of having a chat to us about how that could work. All right, so we're in the Faculty of Science and Technology, and we're in the School of Science. You're actually going to see a bunch of other students with you though, so it's really exciting with our new courses. You'll see each other in medical and biomedical science, but some of the units that you do are common with other science students who are in our faculty. And we also have a lot of Faculty of Health students who will be taking your units, because of course there's a lot of crossover there. So you'll see environmental scientists, there'll be some students who are in a Teach Out for Forensic Studies course. So there'll be a bunch of different people in your units with you, which is really kind of exciting. Career paths for all of you in these 2 courses. So there's actually a lot of common crossover here, and it really depends on what you want to do and how you want to get there. But there's very few things that I would say that people in either course can't cross over into once they actually finish their degree. The only thing that I would say in terms of medical science versus biomedical science. Oh, yeah, come on in, welcome. Welcome, come on in. Medical science and biomedical science? Yeah, awesome. So the only thing I'd say about the differences between the two courses is our medical science course is really highly prescribed, and we'll see that in a second. Every single unit has been chosen for you, and usually students might choose that if they definitely know that they want to do postgrad medicine, for example, or they want to be a medical science researcher. If you're doing biomedical science, it doesn't stop you from doing either of those two things later on, but it really is just a deep dive that helps students follow that pathway. If you're doing biomedical science, there's a little more flexibility in terms of the choices of your units, and it also allows you enough flexibility to actually choose another major, which might be in a health-related area. So if you wanted to go into allied health for postgraduate, so perhaps you were interested in pharmacy or nutrition or physiotherapy or something like that, you've got a bit more flexibility to do that. I will say too, in your first semester, it's still possible for anybody to swap over. So if you get into your first semester and you think, oh, thinking about these units going forwards, actually I might want to swap from biomedical into medical or vice versa, it's possible to do at that really early stage. If you leave it for too long, it becomes more difficult because some units you will and won't have taken. All right, let's have a look here. In terms of your courses, we'll look at the structure, but one of the best things that we have in these courses that's now compulsory, it's actually structured as part of your course, is that you will all have to do a placement at some point. And actually UC, I think, is still the top university in the ACT for graduate employment, and I think graduate salary as well. We just run a course advisory group with people from industry who take on our students, and we have wonderful feedback for how well prepared our students are to go directly into those jobs. So as part of your course, you'll actually end up doing a placement, likely in your third year, where you'll be embedded either in a research group or a placement, for example, in a capital pathology here in Canberra, where you actually get on the ground hands-on experience in a workplace environment. So before you even finish your course, you've essentially had work experience exactly in a field that you would like to work in. All right, so a little bit of admin. Biomedical science students, all of you will have a course structure that looks like this. So you can see all of the units that you would take here, semester 2, then going into semester 1. And this information is on our course advice site. So in fact, a little bit more information than this, but it will take you through your general study pattern. So you have all of that information. In terms of how this works, we have what we call the core major in science. This is color-coded. So the core major in science, you can kind of see the blue units there. That's what all science students will take. So regardless of whether you're biomedical science or medical science or environmental science, or perhaps just finishing off some forensic courses, you might still be in this, you will all do those units together, and they're compulsory units, and they're spread out throughout your course. So we start in this foundation year with a bit of data analysis, a bit of chemistry, a bit of biology, and a bit of physics to make sure everybody kind of can launch into the next set of units. But going on later on, we have these professional units as well, which is really gaining those professional skills that will enable you to step straight into the workplace. So that's one of your majors. Your next major is what we call a specialist major in biomedical science. So it's a series of content units. You can see things written here like mechanisms of disease, foundations of inheritance, diversity and evolution, fundamentals of biochemistry. So it's really the content specific units to do with the biomedical science field. And there are 8 units of those, progressing through to some capstone units where it's really those final units that are bringing all of your study together. As part of biomedical science though, whilst when we say that it's a bit more flexible, what we really mean is that you have final 8 units that are all open electives, and they can literally be anything that you can take in the whole of the university that you have the prerequisites for. So I found one the other day that was I think it was from Hunger Games to Hungry Hungry Caterpillar, run in one of the other faculties. You can take that if you want to. They can be any units from anywhere. They really can be that. So if you just want a completely different flavour to your course, that's fine. Generally, we would advise students to have a think about where their interests lie. It might be that you want to go and do some units in business, government and law because you're interested in governance or policy making stuff, depending on if you might be wanting to go into the public service, for example. It might be that you want to take some units from health because you're interested in going into or exploring something like pharmacy or nutrition later on. What I would recommend in that case is that when you go into your first unit of professional orientation with Michael coming into this semester, that's the unit where you might like to consider what you would do with those units. And the first of them that you would take is the following semester, so semester 1 next year. So you have a chance to think about what you want to do with them before you go into it. That's also where, if you're getting credit from outside, those credited units mostly would end up going into those open electives if they don't directly line up with some of the units that we're running. So there's a bit more flexibility there. I will just point out here, so you guys are all about to go into chemical concepts. That does have school chemistry as assumed knowledge. We do have a bunch of resources to help with that, but if at any stage anybody's concerned about how they're travelling in that chemical concepts unit, it is a core unit, so everybody does have to do it, and it is a prerequisite going on to your later units. So please come and have a chat to the convener or myself, and myself, I guess, if you have any questions or concerns about that. Medical science is kind of easier in some ways and less easy in others. You'll notice that the only difference here is you have 2 other majors other than that first core, rather than the last set of 8 open elective units. So it's highly prescribed. There's no unit that you can choose, and it therefore is really great if you are looking at that directed study plan for yourself. What it does mean though is we oftentimes have trouble providing credit for students if they've done other study because there aren't any open electives, and it also means you don't have a choice. So if there is something from outside of our faculty that you're interested in, unfortunately your study plan doesn't have space for it, but you can come have a chat to us if you have any concerns about that. Obviously also if you for some reason don't complete a unit or decide to study part-time, it does tend to extend your study pattern because there isn't any flexibility with the units. So just be aware of that. Come and talk to us early if you think you've got a problem or you might have some concerns. All right, course advice, just a reminder, in the first instance, you've got access to a heap of information on a Canvas site that you will have been sent an invitation to. So that's general study patterns, internships, general course advice, all that kind of thing. And the digital handbook where you can find all of the information on all of your units already. If you've got a question that you still have at that point, we have a general inbox that you can email and someone will help you out there. They might escalate you to Michael or myself depending on what the nature of it is, but it just means you're most likely to get your question answered sooner rather than later because the right person will be directed to it. And they'll escalate to myself. Adrian Dusting is the other program director. He is the environmental science guy. I would say you should go and bother him, but that's probably not very nice of me, so perhaps don't do that. But you'll see him in data analysis skills for science coming up in this semester as well. All right, does anybody have any questions? That was a massive whirlwind. Who's feeling stressed about university? Who's feeling okay? Who doesn't want to say yes or no? Fair enough, I'm just putting you on the spot.
Are you all enrolled for the semester? You got your units and everything? Excellent. Have you had a look at the Canvas pages yet? Do you know how to log in?
That's something, so we can help you guys with, I mean, right now we have got this time dedicated in our schedules to help you with any questions like that. So if you've got questions, absolutely. Just for the benefit of the recording so that you don't listen to me inanely answering questions that you can't hear, maybe, Michael, we might stop the recording.
Sure.
But welcome to those of you who are listening at home.